I'll have the WebEx.
There you go.
See if we can also connect this.
Good. Okay. While he's doing that, for the folks who are here, we'll start 1 minute early. I just want to make a couple general comments and then we can go through this. Oh God, I need to turn off my speaker because he's got his on and that's going to drive me nuts. Okay.
Do you want to sit here? Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
I can see
That's fine, I can sit here. I'll sit over here. I'll sit over
The intention to use the camera that's on it? I wasn't sure.
it.
It was just flashing earlier. It's on flash now.
Which camera?
The little.
We're a little disorganized.
Oh,
I said we're a little disorganized.
you know where that came from?
I know, we sang today and it was blinking at us, so we unplugged it.
It appeared.
Maybe somebody requested it from cats. It's a good thing to request.
Well, Pam has said she fixed it.
There's Valerie. Hey, Valerie, can I see you? I haven't seen you in forever. Don't tell me it's a bad hair day. Can't hear you, Valerie. You're muted. Oh my God. She's wearing a big brimmed hat and big sunglasses and short sleeve because she's bragging on. Yeah. I hope you don't need to ask me for anything because you're not making me feel more well inclined towards saying yes.
No.
Oh, good.
I just thought I'd hang out with you guys while I'm on my walk.
Oh my God. Okay. I have to do that later today and the temp's 40 degrees, which is
Well,
February the wind.
I think it's 60 or 65 or something. It's not sunny if that gives you any
Still have
consolation.
No.
Oh,
it's
okay.
fine.
We don't need this. We don't need this.
Okay, I want to make a couple comments before we get started. So you guys are the only students present. Welcome.
Who are they, Deb? Who's there?
Preston, Liam, Shruti, and Alex.
Okay.
Oh, and Andrew. Well, he's not physically here at the moment, so out of sight, out of mind, right? Okay. We talked about this yesterday in class. Okay, so I just want to make a couple comments. The biggest issue, and so it's really unfortunate Josh isn't here. Yeah, since those are our 3 PhD students. Well, our 3 new first-year students. There's somebody. Hi. And yes, you are. And who are you? Public health education. Oh, please have a seat. Okay. Okay.
Who Deb? Who came?
I can't pronounce her name, but she's in the public health administration program. She's considering applying for the MS concentration or already has. I'm not sure. So.
Oh, great. Okay.
All right. I know this is the 4th time I've said it, but I'm really going to say something following it this time. Is I want to make a few comments. I keep getting interrupted for good reasons, but the biggest issue for anybody who's new to graduate school, and for the 2nd and 3rd year students, I hope you've already learned this, is if you're having an issue, it does not help you to spin your wheels and struggle and fuss and not figure it out. Oh, there's Maya. Hi, Maya. It's perfectly appropriate for you guys to struggle a bit with the content and dig deeper and try to figure. That's where we want the struggle. Okay, that's where we want you working. If it's administrative, so mostly this is going to be about administrative stuff. Okay, what are the scopes of things? There's paperwork for everything. So in general, what are these processes? And what are processes for interacting with other students and the faculty so that you can reduce the administrative load on you and focus on your coursework and research. So that's our mission in life for you. So we have 3 advanced-ish students here. We have
Advancing.
advancing, yeah, who've been here for more than a year, can help us out with some of this. And I'm just going to highlight the major milestones, and then we can drop down into the details, and these 2 guys can talk. We have the first year experience. You should have already, well, my guys already know. if you're a non-concentration student, you have to do the first year experience, thesis proposal, thesis defense, qualifying. And for each of these, you always constitute a committee, and then you do the proposal, and then you do the defense, and there's a lot of work in between. Qualifying exam, constitute the committee, form your reading list, complete the exam. Dissertation the same, constitute the committee, do the proposal, complete the project. There's some amount of work involved in that. Okay. For Maya, I think, Josh is online. Maya, I believe, is a concentration student. Okay, so Maya, your job is, if you have any issues or problems in getting through the coursework, to contact somebody, any faculty member, the instructor, Pam Garbrick, and say, I'm struggling with this, help me. Okay, and there's no shame in that at all. I'm going to be quiet now. But yeah, I will give you your paper. He's got papers. He took notes last time. So good.
So, oh, I couldn't do that. So we had, in the past, we've talked about pretty much like each of those pieces, and then finished up with sort of general practices, good student practices to be successful, and to maximize the sort of your benefit of being here. So if so I don't know if we need to. So the first year experience, does anyone have any questions about what that should entail? All the PhD and MS thesis folks should have filled out something with your advisor, say, here's what we're going to do. We have that just to get you, to kickstart you to getting involved in research, right? That's just to get you involved in the lab, get you feel like you are part of this community, part of this group, and just to get you in, because I think one of the things that we found is that sometimes people just have a hard time, sort of getting started with research. So they're not sure where to start, what to start. And so this is just a way to kickstart you and get you involved. And then I think things start rolling a bit easier.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
We have one guest here, and I realize I'm Deborah Steele Johnson. I'm chair of the department. Scott Watamanu, graduate program director. David Lahise, IO area leader. Jan Javina, HF area leader. So if you're more focused on HF or IO, you can contact any of these folks. And my base area is IO.
Yes, you can.
Briefly. Before we go into first year experience and thesis and so on, I want to mention the graduate handbook.
Ah.
I read mine when I was first started graduate school.
Right, and probably you haven't read it since.
He rewrites it. He revises it all the time.
Pam and I just finished revising the whole thing.
And we now have fillable forms, which will be much nicer to deal with. Because we're doing all the forms online.
But yeah, so the process is in there. You just need to read it, and also you need to kind of lead your own trajectory through the program according to that handbook. Like, look at the milestones and the forms that you need to do, and remind the committee and everyone else that it's time to sign this form and things like that.
Amplifying on that, you are your best advocate. In my lab, we refer to this as diplomatic nagging. And as my lab members will tell you, I need a lot of that because I get too many emails and I lose things. And then they say, did you get that from me? And if you didn't get an email back from me saying, got it, I don't know where it went. You need to resend it. So sorry. Just the way it is right now. So you need to figure out how to work with your advisors, and you need to advocate for yourselves and make sure people are paying attention to you because we get busy.
I call it just being proactive. Be proactive. So I remember when I actually read the handbook when I first started graduate school. And this was before the day, this was before the internet was around. So I didn't there was no reading it beforehand. It wasn't online, right? So you got a piece of paper from someone.
You did. Sorry, I didn't get a handbook. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know what that means in terms of anything. Like institution you were at, or just, you guys are just so bright that you didn't need one, or what? But I had one. And it actually scared me to read it. And I'll tell you what scared me. So I don't know how many of you folks, but I just went undergrad, high school, undergraduate, grad school, because if I'm going to be poor, I'm going to be poor for a while, and then hopefully I won't, or as. So I'm reading it, and I'm reading about the master's thesis, and it says, this is going, this is original research that you conduct to, further the discipline, and that scared me because I'd been in the library, I'd seen how many rows and rows of psychology journals there were, and I'm like, is there anything new even to discover yet? Like, and so it was like frightening, like, oh my gosh, how can I come up with anything that's new? But it turns out, and this is still true today, even though probably the number of bookshelves for psychology journals has, gosh, I don't know, it was like 1985. So it probably tripled by now. I mean, lots. This is still true today. There are lots of things that are unknown, and that sort of, and so it is daunting at first to say, oh, you have to do something original and contributing. But the way that you figure out what is, what is original is, and this is part of our more general strategies, is the way you find out is purely by reading. The more you read, the more you find out what is missing. And I am still surprised when I read articles or something, and I'm as I'm reading, I'm thinking, well, if I was doing this, the first thing I would do is this, right? To me, it's like, here's the first question that seems reasonable to answer. And no one has answered it. They've simply sort of skipped along and gone on to sort of the next things, but oftentimes some of the things that I think are sort of would be the things I would want to know first off haven't been done. And that's not unusual. How we get to a particular question is sometimes pretty indirect. And so we may get to this point and be asking questions about asking a particular question, but there's, pieces missing in between, but we don't see it because, we got to here through a different route, different path. And so to me, it was scary. And, and you sort of work through it and, so you start doing research, and then the research, good research, ends up being, generative in that, I asked this little question and I do this experiment and you may find out, oh, I didn't actually answer the question I started off with. but there's a whole bunch of other questions that sort of got to me as I was looking at this data. And that's the way sort of research goes and how it snowballs. And, but the key, and again, sort of why we give that research, why we require that first research experience is, the key is you just have to start doing it something and reading, and things just sort of progress. Of course, your advisor is an important piece of all this, because, you know, one of the things your advisor should help you with, you know, in my lab, I want my students to come up with the general sort of idea, what sort of things they're interested in, you know, an approach. And then, you know, we're going to work together to figure out exactly, okay, what kind of experiments should we do? And part of that is making, or trying to make sure that the project doesn't sort of explode into something unmanageable. I know I always worry about making sure that things are doable. That is, I'm not going to spend, you know, I'm not going to spend 3 years collecting data and then have to do all this stuff, because that's something you can do when someone else is paying you better wages. But so keeping that scope, you know, sort of tractable and in control is really something that your advisor should be sort of monitoring, because it is really easy to get sort of questions that get really out of proportion and big, right? So if you're doing some factorial design, every time you add a variable, right, you are sort of, you know, multiplying trials and or subjects, and things can get you know, sort of away from you pretty quickly. So your advisor should be helping you do that. I mean, and if the project gets too big, then, and, you know, sort of my mind, sort of a really sort of good strategy is if your master's project evolves, or you can see this evolution to something bigger, well, then you have this master's piece, and then you can go on and then you have a dissertation, right? I mean, you're just sort of evolving and allowing that, you know, and developing that growth, because it's going to be part of the next step. Yeah, so I'm going to now get.
Okay. What I would like to do, because I want to make sure you guys, I have some folks who are not first year students and a couple first years in here. So I guess what I would like to hear from the first years is something they're curious about, concerned about, kind of want to know how something works. And from the second and advanced years, it might be some issue, concern you have for your next step, or it might be some piece of advice you have for the newbies. So who'd like to start us out?
Well, compliments. We'll take compliments.
So for the first year, so can I pick on you, Andrew? You're in my lab. You know we're friendly and don't bite too hard. So when you're moving through towards your master's thesis, what's something that you're excited about, to David's point, nervous about, wonder about?
Yes.
From a more broad scope. So I'm nervous about data collection, somewhat nervous about first year experience, not too much. I think those sort of presentation tutors have sort of fallen off at this point.
You still need to schedule those practice talks.
Yes. To be honest, I think everything's been pretty straightforward. That question, I've asked, so that's very important.
Okay, and you have the benefit possibly of being in a larger lab where you've been hearing for a full semester people who are a step or two ahead of you and what they're in processing that as you move forward also. Shruti, you're in a little bit different boat. Do you have any issues or concerns? You're coming in postmasters. That kind of brings a different set of issues with it.
Contact people and say, are you okay with this? Am I okay for it? Kind of thing. So that's going on. Doing lots of reviewing of the patient. I can go forward from there. Yeah, getting help.
And Nathan, I talked to him this morning. He's excited about helping you.
We're talking next week on 15.
Perfect.
Excited for that.
I liked my quals process. I know that's weird. Josh. Anything you wish we had told you before you started here, or anything? Things that are working well? Want to get out of the spotlight and pass? You can tag somebody else. Okay. Do the second and advanced students have a suggestion for how to be more effective, less stress, more productive?
So it's very easy to, like, you're looking at the semester. It can look really overwhelming, and you have to kind of narrow your gaze to a more week to week manageable breaking down the timeline of actually getting through those readings, staggering them in a way, and making sure that when you are covering that content, that you're actually getting the most out of it, either by writing notes for you to come back later to it or not. But I've noticed the downside of also doing that is that you forget about some of the bigger term projects. Because it's very easy to do week by week by week by week. 5 weeks go by and you realize I have not touched my first year experience, or I have not thought about my thesis at all. And so the difficulty of grad school is simply getting the stuff done that needs to be done immediately while still also looking towards the future. And just because sometimes it's going to be tough to strike that balance, you're going to feel like you made more progress towards the end goal of completing a research project. Other times you're going to focus more on getting the stuff done for the class that you need to, because maybe you're presenting that day or maybe there's a deadline. And so balancing that is the dance of grad school. That's something that I've been trying to learn throughout my 2.5 years now.
Some of us are still trying to learn that.
Yeah,
So,
it's a good life lesson because that's what you gotta do for the rest of your life.
yeah.
Yeah. So every time you think that it's going to get easier once you graduate, there's always another. It seems like with that, but that you gain skills, you learn how to deal with it, and this is the opportunity to learn when a lot of people are here supporting you. If you ever have questions or concerns, talk to your fellow grad students. It's really helpful to talk to your advisors, of course, too, but just talking to other grad students can also help alleviate that, because you're stressed, probably someone else is stressed, and they were stressed the way that you were, but they figured out how to get out of it. Maybe that could help you. That's mine. Your second year's one.
Alex and Savannah.
So when prioritizing what to do, I can't stress how important it is to have some type of tangible representation of it. So whether it's writing it down, because if you're going off a list in your head, it's gonna get confusing and you're probably gonna forget something. So I see a lot of people with paper planners. I use Google Calendar, just having somewhere to where you can prioritize and actually figure out how much time you want to allocate to something. And if you need, so it's more organized.
And by doing that, you also set smaller goals for yourself. Because if you're looking at the reward of going through this is I get my master's. That takes 3 years. It's a long time to obtain the reward. But if you look at it, I got this step done. I got this step done. By breaking it down and creating those from timelines, you can see yourself make progress rather than a loading bar go from 0 to 100 all at once. It's very common, like, I don't know, when you're talking to family members who didn't go through graduate school, they're like, so when are you done? You're like, well, I finished this, I'm a little bit closer, but then after that I got to do this. They usually have checked out by then. But as long as you understand your progress along the way, that's the important part, to not let that question get to you. And you'll be very happy to tell them, yes, I did finish.
Savannah?
Figure out how much time you have in a week to spend doing something and then actually block out time in your calendar to do that. I put it on my Google Calendar. You can make a mental note to yourself if that works better, but it's real easy to be like, I have all of these things to do and then get wrapped up in something that takes longer than you think it's gonna take. And then you're like, crap, I have all these readings to do for class. Sort of along those lines, set a maximum amount of time you can dedicate to a particular problem. So like there are, yeah, this translates well to experiments as well, but like in my basic universe, there are a million different things I can do to improve my model and make it better. But those million things all have a time cost to them. And they all have a sort of relative improvement contribution too. But they don't all take about the same amount of time, right? And they don't all have the same relative improvement value. And so there's a, prioritization, like this might improve my model performance like 1%, but it's going to take me 50 hours to do. So that's not really a useful allocation of your time. And similarly, you might say, well, this thing would really improve my model, X. And I think it will cost this amount of time. But then you start to get into it and you realize there's all these other things, and it's just a big problem. And you have these other things over here that you could do instead that would be, maybe they're halfway solutions and, they take less time, right? And so some of this is sort of a continual juggling of like, is this particular thing I've identified, is that really worth the time it's going to cost me to do this? Can I do something else that, maybe would be better and take less time, or equally as good and take less time? And so sort of juggling those priorities, I think, is a really useful way to think about things. And then the other thing I would say, it does actually, these things do get easier the more you do them. So the first time you write a paper, it will probably be a terrible experience. And you'll be like, why did I even do this? The next one gets easier, and the one after that gets even easier.
I want to chime in on one little thing. There's something in social psychology called the planning fallacy. So things always take longer than you expected them to. So when I plot things, I think, oh, this is going to take me an hour. I'll put it in my calendar for 2. Because it's like, I grossly underestimate time. Preston, surely you'll have something, sage advice to offer these.
I was actually going to say something very similar to Savannah. You can spend a lot of time being meticulous and maybe pedantic, trying to optimize the structure of your paper, experimental design, and so on. But at some point, you have to make progress, and that's what you have.
High quality, but not perfect. You're never going to attain perfect.
It's an optimization problem.
Yes.
Right? That's what it is. And you need to avoid diminishing returns. Yeah, so if you like, you can turn it into a mathematical equation.
And Preston could program that.
It'll tell you, stop that now. Switch to.
There are actually time management apps, right, that you can use. But I would just warn you that you don't want to take the fun out of your lives. You don't want to mechanize your life. Maybe you'll do that if you, after you graduate, you'll have jobs that are more demanding in terms of planning and strategically allocating your time and all that stuff. At least this is my impression, that graduate school is also the time when you have to have fun. Like,
Mhm.
you've come to this program because you like science, I assume, right? Not just because you want a diploma. And you want to give yourself time to explore scientific questions, to read, to go to conferences, enjoy what other people are talking about, interact with other graduate students. All these things are important in the life of a graduate student, and they shouldn't necessarily be, yes, you do need to do time management. You need to prioritize, you need to deliver, but you also need to make sure that you have time to enjoy.
And I want to tag onto that also. And it's not, you do need some work-life balance. We want you to work as hard as you possibly can, but this is a marathon. So you have to take breaks. And in addition to finding enjoyment in the scholarly part of it, I told both my kids, because they both went through graduate school, and it's stressful, and they reminded me of how stressful it was as they were going through. I'd forgotten from my own. But it is stressful. And so you need to find things to de-stress, because we know as psychologists that if you take rest breaks, you can actually produce more. So you can't be 100% rest breaks and not produce, but you do need to find some sort of a balance, and that might be a little bit different for each of you.
And I think it's easier.
He plays hockey.
I think it's easier once you sort of overcome the time management issue. So I don't really remember very much of my graduate school, but I think that other than, my story about being scared when I read the handbook, and sort of initially, again, working out the time management or optimization sort of mode. And then things, once you sort of got that, then things feel like things are in control, right? And when you feel like you're in control of things, that results in less stress. And then you can, sort of see that they're, once you sort of got things figured out and sort of optimized the way that you do things, then there is time to do things like, play games. When I was in grad school, I played, there's a group of graduate students and young faculty who would get together and just play ball at a park that was a couple blocks from my house. And so just show up there Saturday morning at whatever time, I can't remember what time we started, 9 morning. We'd play, and we just go out of teams, play for, 3 or 4 hours, and that was good. And when you're really in control, everything's working out. My last year of graduate school, my 4th year, I played on 3 hockey teams, 2 of them simultaneously, with a university team, and I played for a contact community league team, which is weird because I never experienced contact community league teams. So most of the time they're non-contact because people have to go to work in the morning. They can't collect unemployment if you get injured playing hockey. But yeah, you do have to have that balance. And I think keeping your body in shape is important.
A lot of my lab members, and I believe the graduate students in general, they go over and use the gym. We have an amazing gym facility, and exercise, diet, sleep. If you don't protect those things, you can't work hard, and we want you to work hard and make progress. And then I think the graduate students are now socializing. You have sort of periodic social events, which dropped off during COVID, and that was really rough. So I'm delighted to hear that the graduate students are socializing again. I think that's immensely valuable.
Yeah, I think it's good.
David, did you have any tips for surviving?
I'm here to give tips. No, I think a lot of what you guys said is what I would probably say. I think the thing that Jan said was something I always think about is to enjoy the problem that you're working on. It shouldn't, it's not, you should take some of the stress out, like you have to finish this, you have to get this done, thing, and just enjoy the fact that you're trying to solve something and working on that. A lot of stress. You're looking like you can't put their practicing without real. Scott's kind of scary, but like I'm certainly approachable. No, it's easy. So making mistakes here is good because then you can learn from them and not get, destroyed or whatever. When you get out in the workplace, it's a lot scarier.
Yeah.
I would just enjoy the stuff that you're working on, but do make time to do. The other advice I give you, I don't know if you guys actually read books that are not like journal articles and stuff like that, but I would continue to try to do that, make some time to just like read novels, fiction, things like that.
You can read comics too. Comics are fun.
I read what I call
Well, I mean, we're adults.
I read graphic novels.
I call it
Adult
popcorn
comics.
fiction, you know,
But
just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
Yeah.
And I find that really relaxing. But it's still engaging the mind, but relaxing. Stay off the social media stuff.
We got Pamela saying online and Valerie. Do you have any tips? And Chloe, do you have any questions, concerns? Valerie? Valerie,
He's walking.
can you hear us? Wait. I've got my volume turned on. She's got herself muted. You're muted, Valerie. Pam, do you have anything? Pamela, do you have any suggestions? Oh, Pamela's going. Yes, what do you got to say?
Well, I have a story to tell.
Okay.
Okay, we'll turn it.
Many of you know the rock band the Queens. Anyone knows about the Queens?
Queen, yes.
The Queens, they're a bit maybe before the time for some of you, but they are. I mean, they're just world famous, right? And do you know the guitarist Brian May of the group?
Yeah.
So anyway, I believe he's one of the founders of, if not the founder, he's one of the founders of the group. And so after he had his spectacular, fabulous career in music, and I don't know, what his net worth is, but probably I don't have enough fingers and toes to count. But then he went back to graduate school and got his PhD in astrophysics. Yeah. And of course he was, not 22 by then. And then he was asked, well, you were a star, a famous person. Did you get any breaks during graduate school? And he said, nope, none at all. And in fact, he found graduate school very stressful. Even with the experience that he has had, right? You can imagine the career, the career that he has had. And so he was asked in this interview, so what did you find so stressful in graduate school? And he said, well, because you're constantly being evaluated in graduate school. Which is true, because, when you write something and, you give it to your, instructor of your class or your advisor or reader or we just, just about cross out every single word that you think is the perfect word that should be included in the paper. And then you do it 3 times later, they continue to be crossing out and rewrite, revision, and so on and so forth. So some of that just cannot be helped, right? So you just kind of need to take those as feedback and not as evaluation of your personal worth. And also keep in mind that once you leave school, you're not going to get that kind of feedback. You may get your contract discontinued. You may not be asked to, do the task again. You may never be invited to the same meeting, but whatever people don't like, they're not going to tell you necessarily, or very few would. And so the evaluation and the feedback that you get in graduate school is, don't take them as evaluation of your personal worth. These are, feedbacks on technical writings. These are, feedback for the scientific process and so on. So it's hard to take a lot of times, but it just comes with the training.
Thank you, Pamela. I just have a quick thing to add to that. In my lab, because I used to actually mark things with the red pen so they could see it easily back in the paper days. And so some of my students back then would tell the more junior students, count it as a win when it shifts from bright red to pinkish. Because
The pen's running out?
yeah, no, they're doing more right. And then I've tried to communicate clearly that once you get to graduate school, writing becomes more of a community activity, a collaborative activity. And it is not a criticism of you personally. Everybody is trying to help you create a better communication of whatever it is. Valerie, are you unmuted yet? Valerie. All right, we're giving up on you, Valerie. Chloe, do you have any questions or concerns? She's driving a car, I think.
Sorry, give me 1 second. So something I found that I've struggled with most has been the balance between short-term goals and long-term goals. So I found what Liam had to say about that was particularly helpful in trying to achieve the balance between the two.
Okay, thank you. Maya, we haven't heard from you yet. Did you wish to ask anything, offer anything?
Kind of the same thing about long-term and short-term goals and not losing sight of the longer-term projects, because I keep comparing this to my undergraduate experience. In undergraduate, you could just do week to week to week tasks because that was how it was structured. So honestly, most of my time has just been learning how to set a routine and learning how to schedule my work and allot time properly, and also allot time to taking care of myself.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, she triggered two more things, and then you guys might have triggered some things for you guys too. One thing I brought up in class yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I lose track of days, was undergraduate is much more about demonstrating your competence, so memorize, regurgitate. Graduate school is about developing competence, increasing competence, and that's a never-ending task. We're all still learning, and that's actually why we like this job, because we never get bored in it, so yay. Because we're always learning something. And so that was one thing. You're building competence. I can't remember the other thing.
Maybe, can I?
Yes, please.
I think maybe you can remember. As a grad student, you kind of direct your own learning. There's a trajectory that you have a say in how it goes and which direction you go. As an undergrad, you kind of learn what you're given, you're fed. And that's, it might sound good and attractive that you have that power to direct your trajectory, but it's non-trivial. So it requires a little bit of courage and responsibility, keeping track of things and having goals prior to.
And I remember my second thing, which was your potential. So sometimes I've had a lot of students come through my lab over the years. So people like my topics, which is kind of cool. They're scared of David. Maybe that too. But your potential, I'm not going to treat you equally because then I feel like I'm cheating you. And so students will say, well, you didn't make this person work as hard as you're making me work. And I'm like, great. Because then that means I see more potential in you, and my job is to help you achieve your own personal potential. So Liam, I might be pushing you a lot harder in class, and particularly when I have first through third years in the class, I have much higher expectations of the third years. And then the third years sometimes scare the first years because they're saying all this amazing stuff, and the first years are kind of going, shit, am I supposed to know all that already? And it's like, no, your first year. But I will not, I promise you, people in my lab, I promise not to treat you equally because I believe that would be cheating you.
The heck with this equity stuff. I think the other thing is it connects to what John said and what David said. Certainly in academics, but even if you are well into the applied world and work for, consulting and things, skills that you're learning, part of the thing is, I think undergraduate education doesn't really foster true learning, right? It basically fosters, what do I need to know? The professor told me, or the book told me, then I need to be able to tell that back. So that's really not learning for understanding. And what you do in graduate school, because this is sort of the beginning of your career, is what you're learning is going to now is going to be stuff that you need to understand and remember, like internalize. And this is because it's going to be relevant, throughout the rest of your career. And again, in academics or on the apply side, that process doesn't stop when you walk and get this piece of paper that says you attended, and then when you actually get a piece of paper in the mail, it says you graduated, here's my degree. You are constantly having to learn new things. We don't stop reading papers, once we get out of grad school, because now we know everything. Because you're not going to be current, right? And when you're in the industry, every time you get a new contract, you got to learn about that industry, whether you're in human factors or IO, right? So graduate school, one of the differences, a key difference from the undergraduate, at least to me, is you now have to approach your learning in a different way. This is not about I'm learning for a test, even though there are still tests. But really what you're looking for is I'm learning stuff so that I can use it later. And that's a very different perspective. And you sort of need to you need to get to that point pretty quick, otherwise it's going to be a bigger struggle. And so that's sort of to me, that's a key difference between undergraduate and graduate, besides the fact that coursework, is different. If you're in a thesis or dissertation, there are these long-term projects that stretch over many semesters that aren't just encapsulated in one semester at a time, which most undergraduate tends to be. And the sooner you figure that out and sort of adjust, the easier that process will be.
Did you wish to say anything?
Good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am so happy that I was able to attend this because everything that I'm learning here is actually something that I had experienced on my own, not in a graduate school, but I came as a post-traditional student to Wright State with a career, but I developed interest in health and wellness topics that I couldn't find the answers anywhere else. And I needed to be at the university because I knew I'm going to have access to that information. And those who are my friends and colleagues at work, if I would ask them, what is, in your opinion, the best luxury you can have? They will all say time. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, everything else becomes irrelevant when you really want to pursue your passions and you have something in your life that you really want to do and spend time and you don't have that. This is really interesting how you shared all your experience of time management. And when I speak with students here at the university, I noticed something that those who make their daily list with something in the corner that they do. So yes, you do want to put on your calendar your short and long-term goals and what you will do tomorrow and in a week. But don't forget to also write what you will be doing tomorrow, because that is also a very good and practical way of keeping track of them. On top of that, when you mentioned that health, particularly what is best for keeping yourself well and healthy while you're going through this experience, how interesting when you mentioned that exercise is important, the sleep is important, the diet is important. I am particularly interested in an area of research which is focused on brain optimization and what we can do to really get maximum for what amount of time we have to spend on particular tasks. And diet seems to play a huge role. I can't tell you how many factors now in diet may make you be more focused, more task-oriented versus just really putting this maybe somewhere on your less important list of tasks. So as an example, there is an interesting research on MCT oil, which happens to be used in brain optimization. So medium chain triglyceride derived from coconut oil that are now offered in capsules can actually make you retain more information in a shorter period of time. Not that I am promoting this particular product. However, I've tried it myself, and I did see a cognitive increase in how I retain the information. Also blueberries, something so benign. For up to 6 hours after you have a cup of blueberries, you are able to stay more focused and retain more information. So little things that maybe we don't pay as much attention can actually make a big difference in how we think and how we function. Going to bed before midnight versus after midnight and sleeping longer in the morning makes a huge difference. The growth hormone peaks between 10 p.m. and midnight. And after that, it stays very low. So actually, if you really want to stay focused and be able to really comprehend as much as you possibly can, if you go to bed around 10 or 11 p.m. and wake up around 6 or 7, you will be able to function better the next day. So something maybe important to some, maybe not, but I did particularly test it on myself. It's very beneficial. So all of that.
Thank you. Josh, I'm sorry, Josh?
Have you
You
figured
still
out what
have
you're
it.
gonna say now?
So much pressure.
There's a I mean, I don't know, but like sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of a trade-off or a tug of war, so to speak, in terms of like for your thesis project or for you want to achieve good progress. So I think there's definitely a very rails you from more of a very internalized motivation to something.
interest for a project because you have, obviously you have practical constraints when you want to progress along. So I think that is something that I'm feeling a little bit to do.
That doesn't surprise me in the least. We often have, in fact, Shruti, you and I were having that conversation recently. She has this passion. So it's how do we find a piece of that passion we can convert into something she can be interested in long enough to complete the thesis? Because we can't do her passion because it's just not feasible in the space of a master. So I think a lot of students struggle with this. Did you want to add to that, Shruti?
Talking to people actually helps a lot. Like I sit down and talk to probably like I was talking to Alec the other day and I was talking to Chloe the other day. So just talking, and because they're in the same field like you are, they understand the terms well enough that they can talk to random people, the family, like who don't understand. So I think talking to classmates or like cohort or your lab people will help you a lot in that point and think, hey, this was peaceful. We can go ahead and face that.
Yeah, I do find it helpful talking things out, like when I talk with John or like let's ideas on what we can do, what we need to do. I think that kind of helps me put into perspective what I'm doing, because sometimes I feel like this is a study that I'm doing. It's sometimes hard to put into the big picture how useful it might be, or how what it may contribute to. That kind of a motivation is sometimes, and so talking through ideas kind of gives you puts you out of that mental sensation.
Sure. Yeah. So like you're minimizing. It's like, and the thing is that, and maybe this is part of it, is that, you know, when we do experiments, you're only answering like a tiny piece, right? I mean, you have this, I really want to work on this. And it's like, okay, well, you get to work on this, right? And eventually you add enough of those together and it turns out to be something bigger. But this is like people's, research program, right? The program is, I'm trying to get to here. Chances are you're never going to get there, right? But that's what you're working towards. I mean, and it is, one of the things that you have to do when you write grants is grants, you have to spell out, here's this big picture thing. And then you're going to map out how you're going to progress to that. But I don't know that we ever, none of the grants that I've written has been, and I am going to get there, in 3 years. It's like, but they want to, so you have to be able to step back and look, how does this piece fit in? Or more often, and maybe this is what your experience with Shruti is here's this thing. How do I even just start to approach that? And so you kind of distill it down, like, okay, well, here's a step, and you go forward. But yeah, I mean, so in science experiments, we work on this sort of tiny scale, but I think we're always thinking about the bigger picture that we're trying to head towards. And yeah, so if you just break it down, it's like, if you're explaining to your family, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this experiment. What's what we're doing? Like, and how meaningful is that? I mean, it's sort of like, oh, okay. So then you could give them the long song and dance, but it's that, I think you always have to keep those perspectives in mind, that whole scheme to give meaning to these little things that you're doing, but in the grand scheme of things, sort of where are you heading?
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's do speed round here for our last 2 or 3 minutes of just like a word of advice. I'm going to call on the HF area leadership first, IO, HF, and then I'm going to go around for anybody who wants to do something. I'll grab these people too. So pinging off mine would be find out what your research program passion is, mine's skill acquisition on complex tasks and factors affecting that. So get your, one-liner out. And that's something I've been chasing forever. Still fascinated by that. Quick, one-liner advice. Jan, one word, one line of advice.
Passionate about. Make sure you don't cut too much on those things that you're passionate about. And if possible, and I know I had a discussion with Preston, make them count. Those things that you're passionate about, those side projects that you're pursuing, don't give up on them. Make them count. Capitalize on them for your program. You can always include, publications. You can include ideas from your side project into your thesis.
Okay. One line, David.
Realize that failing can be productive.
Oh, I like that. Pam Sang, one line of advice for the group.
I think what we're learning in graduate school is really the process. The process of learning, the process of doing research. And in my case, the specific topic isn't so important. It's really the process that the process that research is done. And so I mean, of course, it's more fun if you do work on a topic that you know about. So you do need to have a knowledge base for what you work on.
Okay. All right, we're faculty, we're violating the one line rule. Valerie, do you have one line for us?
Yes, develop your identity. What is it that you are going to represent and carry forward in your career? Who are you?
Okay, thank you. David followed the rules. Liam, do you have one line for us? Yeah, I like that. Savannah. Perfect. Preston. Andrew. Don't give up. I don't know your name. Public health. What?
You don't want to talk about your project stay classified.
Sruthi, one line. Okay. Josh, one line. Enjoy. Okay. Alex. Okay. Amaya. Chloe.
Finish the race strong.
Finish the race strong. Okay. I think that's a good place to end.
Have fun.
Have fun. Live your life. Go forth. Enjoy your weekends. Super Bowl.
Prosper.
Live long and prosper. I'm not sure I can make my fingers do that.
Oh, you gotta do both hands.
I can't. Thank you all. You guys have a good weekend. Thanks for playing.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Can you attend this grad school open house on